There are two kinds of people who change the world. The first kind plans everything meticulously. They research, they prepare, they wait until every detail is perfectly in place, and then they wait a little more. The second kind? They jump, before they're ready, before the plan is perfect, before anyone tells them it's a good idea. One type builds the perfect map. The other type discovers the new continent. History remembers both, but only one of them actually moved.
Why can't you start? Is it because you're not ready, or because you want it to be absolutely perfect? There is a developer right now staring at an open coding window. The blueprint is flawless. The vision is perfectly clear. But the first line of code has never been typed. The execution remains at 0. Perfectionism's first trait: impossibly high standards. If it is not a perfect 100, it feels completely worthless, an extreme, paralyzing fear of failure. Deep inside the brain, the amygdala, the fear center, becomes dangerously overactive. Every potential mistake feels like a catastrophe. And third, relentless self-criticism. The perfectionist becomes their own worst enemy. Every single flaw becomes a personal verdict of inadequacy. And here the paradox begins. The harder you chase perfection, the more impossible it becomes to take even the very first step. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis. Research shows perfectionists are 3 times more likely to experience burnout. Perfectionism isn't armor. It's a defense mechanism built from fear.
Now, let us step back into history and discover exactly what perfectionism cost the people who were consumed by it. Leonardo da Vinci, arguably the greatest genius in the entire history of humanity, yet he completed only 20 works in his entire lifetime. Thousands of ideas never left his notebooks. He conceived the helicopter, the tank, solar energy devices, ideas 500 years ahead of his time. But he could not finish them, because reality could never be perfect enough to match the vision inside his mind. Perfectionism held him back, the crushing fear that the real world could never contain what he imagined. And so thousands of extraordinary ideas fell quietly asleep inside his notebooks, forever.
Nikola Tesla. His theories were flawless, but Edison's imperfect practical system conquered the market first. The perfect technology lost to imperfect marketing. Stanley Kubrick. He reshot single scenes over 100 times. His crew was exhausted. But the result? The most technically precise films ever made. Steve Jobs. He fought engineers over single pixels. That obsession launched Apple's design revolution. But hundreds of employees couldn't survive his standards and walked away. And here the paradox of perfectionism is laid completely bare. The perfectionist can produce genuine greatness, but the price is always a trail of unfinished masterpieces. The more perfect you try to be, the more terrifying it becomes to start. And the more terrifying it is to start, the more perfect you feel you need to be first. This is the perfectionist's prison, a cycle that never ends. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis. The more you think, the less you move, like a deer frozen in the headlights of an oncoming car. Just a little more preparation. That sentence becomes a life sentence. Franz Kafka left a dying wish to his closest friend, Max Brod: burn everything I have ever written, every single word, because none of it was perfect enough. Brod refused. He published everything, and because of that single act of defiance, we can read the metamorphosis and the trial today. This is the greatest cost of perfectionism, greatness that was never shared with the world, revolutions that never began, ideas that vanished forever while waiting to be perfect. Christopher Columbus was not a perfect scientist, far from it. He carried with him a catastrophically fatal calculation error. He miscalculated the circumference of the Earth by more than 25%. He dramatically underestimated the distance from Europe to Asia. Spain's Royal Advisory Committee knew it. The finest expert minds in the country reviewed his calculations and told him directly, "Columbus, your math is wrong. Your ships will run out of food long before you reach land." They were mathematically correct, completely, undeniably, perfectly correct. But those perfect advisors never left Spanish soil. Columbus sailed anyway. Wrong calculations, insufficient food, a crew on the edge of mutiny. And yet he pointed his ships toward the open ocean and went. 70 days later, he stepped onto land that would permanently alter the course of human civilization. He believed it was India. It was America. The wrong answer changed history forever. Here is the insight. Perfect data keeps you seated at the table debating endlessly, but an imperfect idea combined with the raw courage to move forward takes you to an entirely new continent.
Sara Blakely was a fax machine salesperson. No fashion experience, no business degree, no capital. She grabbed a pair of scissors and cut the feet off her pantyhose. She always said if she had waited to be perfect, she would still be selling fax machines. Today, Spanx is a billion-dollar company. Wharton professor Adam Grant studied innovators for 10 years. Successful innovators spent 58% less time preparing than those who failed. Because they were less prepared, they moved faster, and in doing so, they received real feedback from the real market far sooner than anyone who was still sitting at a desk perfecting their plan. Perfectionism activates the amygdala, your brain's fear center. Action activates the prefrontal cortex, your brain's problem-solving center. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. I didn't fail. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work. Picasso created 50,000 works. Mozart composed over 600 pieces. We remember only a handful, but that handful changed the world forever. Isaac Newton. We remember him only for the laws of gravity. But Newton spent nearly half his entire life obsessively conducting alchemy experiments. By every rational standard of his time, it was considered complete nonsense, madness, a catastrophic waste of extraordinary genius. But those years of chaotic, relentless experimentation built something invisible and irreplaceable inside him, a deep intuition for how matter behaves, a habit of obsessive observation, the mental foundation that eventually produced his greatest scientific achievements. Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner in physics. In his own words, "I always chose to dive into problems that fascinated me. That was the greatest learning method I ever found." Elon Musk. SpaceX's first 3 rockets exploded catastrophically on launch. 3 consecutive devastating failures. The company stood just weeks away from total bankruptcy. The 4th rocket launched successfully and permanently changed the aerospace industry forever. His words on failure have since become a manifesto for an entire generation of builders. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are simply not innovating enough.
Now, let us place the two types directly side by side. The perfectionist tries to be perfect before they will allow themselves to begin. The adventurist begins immediately and grows better with every single step forward. The perfectionist is paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. The adventurist treats every mistake as valuable data. The perfectionist pursues depth above everything else. The adventurist pursues speed and momentum. But here is what history actually shows us. The greatest achievements ever produced did not come from one type working alone. They came from the collision and combination of both. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Jobs was the perfectionist, relentless, uncompromising, consumed by every microscopic detail of the user experience. Wozniak was the adventurist, fearless, experimental, never happier than when building something that had never existed before. Jobs brought the perfect, uncompromising vision. Wozniak brought the fearless, relentless experimentation. Without that combination, the smartphone you are holding right now would not exist. The people who truly change the world are neither pure perfectionists nor pure adventurists. They are the rare individuals who hold the perfectionist's uncompromising vision and move through the world with the adventurist's fearless courage.
When Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, he didn't just quit. He took a leave of absence. Even adventurers need a safety net. Ready, fire, aim. Don't wait for the perfect shot. Fire first. Watch where the arrow lands, then adjust. The MVP strategy. Before you build the perfect car, give your customer a skateboard and listen to what they say. Tell your brain you'll only work for 5 minutes. Once you start, momentum takes over. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. If you're not embarrassed by your first version, you launched too late.
We return to that blank canvas. This time, the artist doesn't hesitate. The first stroke is messy, but it exists, and that changes everything. Columbus's first voyage was a mess. Edison's first bulb never lit up. Jobs' first Mac was far from perfect. History never waited for a perfect beginning. History was made by courageous beginnings. Whatever you've been putting off, start today. Start messy. Start now. Your imperfect today may become someone else's inspiration tomorrow. It may even become history. Are you a perfectionist or an adventurist? Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether you start today. Drop a comment right now. Write, "I'm starting today." Trick your brain. Make it real. That comment is your first act of courage. If this video made you think, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps this channel keep telling stories that matter. See you in the next one.